Welcome to the channel, you lot. Now, I know what you're thinking, canned food? What's this bloke on about? Listen, we've all been there, short on time, craving a quick bite. But let me tell you, some of that stuff lurking in Walmart's aisles is downright criminal. We're here to separate the culinary diamonds from the downright disasters. Over the years, I've seen some shocking attempts at food, and trust me, these canned concoctions take the biscuit. Get ready to discover which products are an insult to your taste buds and your wallet. Now let's get this show on the road. Right, first up, we've got the classic canned chicken noodle soup. You'd think something so simple would be impossible to mess up, wouldn't you? Well, think again. This stuff is a complete disaster. First off, the broth. It's either bland as dishwater or tastes like they boiled a sock in it. And the chicken? It's like they took a chicken, ran it through a blender, and molded it into these sad, rubbery cubes. The noodles? They're either so overcooked they disintegrate into mush or so tough you need a steak knife to cut through them. Honestly, you'd be better off making your own soup from scratch. This canned abomination? It's a one-way ticket to Flavortown. And not in a good way. Next up, we're tackling a true culinary crime: canned spaghetti. The sauce, if you can even call it that, is a gloopy, saccharine mess. It's like they took a can of crushed tomatoes, added a truckload of sugar, and called it a day. Where's the depth of flavor? The tangy tomatoes, the aromatic herbs, it's enough to make you weep. And the spaghetti itself, it's overcooked, mushy, and breaks apart the moment you try to twirl it around your fork. Honestly, if you're craving spaghetti, do yourself a favor and make it from scratch. This canned abomination, it's a culinary sin and you deserve better. Now, let's talk about canned mixed vegetables, shall we? It's supposed to be a medley of vibrant, flavorful veggies, right? Wrong. This is a one-way ticket to Blandville, population these vegetables. Everything is cooked to within an inch of its life. Mushy carrots, soggy green beans, and potatoes that dissolve into nothingness the moment they touch your tongue. It's like eating baby food, for God's sake. And the flavor? Well, what flavor? It's like they boiled all the personality out of these poor vegetables and left them tasting like nothing. Where's the freshness, the crunch, the vibrancy? It's enough to make a grown man cry. Honestly, if you want something remotely edible, I suggest you steer clear. Chapter 4. Canned Tuna, a Sea of Inconsistency. Right, let's dive into the murky depths of canned tuna, shall we? Now, I'm a big fan of fresh tuna. It's versatile, it's healthy, and it can be absolutely delicious. But canned tuna? That's a whole different kettle of fish. One minute you're dealing with dry, flaky chunks that taste like they've been sitting in a can since the dawn of time. The next you've got this mushy, unidentifiable paste that makes you question the very meaning of life. Sometimes you get a hint of that beautiful, fresh tuna flavor. Other times, it tastes like they caught the fish in a polluted harbor and marinated it in metal shavings. Honestly, if you're going to eat canned tuna, at least spring for the good stuff packed in olive oil. And for God's sake, check the expiration date. Chapter 5. Canned Chili, a Spicy Gamble. Now let's talk about canned chili, shall we? A hearty, flavorful bowl of chili can be a thing of beauty. But let me tell you, this canned concoction is about as far from a thing of beauty as you can get. It's either a thick, gloopy mess that resembles something you'd find in a swamp, or it's a watery, flavorless broth with a few sad beans floating around in it. One will be blander than a rice cake, while the next will have you reaching for the milk like your life depends on it. It's like playing Russian roulette with your taste buds. Honestly, if you're craving a good chili, do yourself a favor and make it from scratch. This canned abomination? It's a culinary gamble, and the odds are not in your favor. Chapter 6. Canned Ravioli. A soggy, sorry excuse for Italian, right? Let's talk about canned ravioli, shall we? Now, I love a good plate of fresh ravioli as much as the next person. But this canned catastrophe, it's an insult to Italian cuisine. First off, the pasta. It's overcooked, mushy, and breaks apart the moment it touches your fork. And the filling? It's either a bland, tasteless mush or it's so salty, it makes your blood pressure spike. And the sauce? It's either a thin, watery mess that tastes like tomato-flavored water, or it's a thick, gloopy concoction that clings to the ravioli like glue. Honestly, if you're craving ravioli, do yourself a favor and either make it from scratch or go to a decent Italian restaurant. This canned abomination, it's a culinary sin and you deserve better. Avoid it like the plague. Chapter 7. Canned Corned Beef. A Textural Nightmare. Listen up, you lot. Today we're tackling a true culinary abomination: canned corned beef. Now I've got nothing against a good corned beef sandwich, but this canned catastrophe is enough to make a grown man weep. It's either dry and crumbly like sawdust mixed with salt, or it's slimy and gelatinous like something you'd find at the bottom of a swamp. There's no in-between, no happy medium. It's a textural nightmare. Honestly, if you're craving corned beef, do yourself a favor and cook it properly. This canned monstrosity, it's an insult to your taste buds and your wallet. Chapter 8. Canned Peas, a mushy, flavorless mess. Right, let's talk about canned peas, shall we? Now, I love fresh peas. They're sweet, they're vibrant, and they're packed with flavor, but canned peas? They're the culinary equivalent of a wet sock. They're always, without fail, mushy. It's like they've been pre-chewed for you by a baby with no teeth. Where's the snap, the crunch, the joy of biting into a fresh pea? It's enough to make you weep. Honestly, if you're looking for a side dish that screams I've given up on life, then by all means crack open a can of these flavorless wonders. But if you want something remotely edible, I suggest you steer clear. Chapter 9. Canned Carrots, a Bland and Bumpy Ride. Listen up, you lot. Today we're tackling a true culinary disaster: canned carrots. Now I love a good carrot. Roasted, pureed, even raw. They can be absolutely delicious. But canned carrots? They're an abomination. They're either cooked to within an inch of their lives, resulting in a mushy, flavorless mess, or they're still crunchy, but in a weird, unpleasant way. It's like biting into a rubber eraser. Honestly, if you're looking for a side dish that screams I've given up on life, then by all means, crack open a can of these flavorless wonders. But if you want something remotely edible, I suggest you steer clear. Avoid it like the plague. Chapter 10. Canned Green Beans, a Preservative-Packed Nightmare. Right, let's talk about canned green beans, shall we? Now, I love fresh green beans. They're crisp, they're flavorful, and they're packed with nutrients. But canned green beans? They're a soggy, salty, preservative-packed nightmare. They're always, without fail, mushy. It's like they've been sitting in a bath of their own juices for weeks on end. Where's the snap, the crunch, the joy of biting into a fresh green bean? It's enough to make you weep. Honestly, if you're looking for a side dish that screams I've given up on life, then by all means, crack open a can of these flavorless wonders. But if you want something remotely edible, I suggest you steer clear. Chapter 11. Canned Fruit Cocktail, a Syrupy sweet disaster. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Canned fruit cocktail. This, my friends, is not a dessert. It's a crime against fruit. It's like they took perfectly good fruit, drowned it in syrup, and then locked it away in a can for all eternity. The fruit itself is an absolute disgrace. It's mushy, it's bland, and it all tastes vaguely the same. You've got your soggy grapes, your rubbery peaches, your flavorless pears. It's a symphony of disappointment. And then there's the syrup. It's like drinking liquid sugar. It's so sweet it makes your teeth ache just looking at it. Honestly, if you're craving fruit, do yourself a favor and buy some fresh stuff. It's nature's candy, this canned abomination. It's a one-way ticket to a sugar coma. Avoid it like the plague. Chapter 12. Canned Beef Stew, a Bland and Boring Betrayal. Alright, you lot, buckle up because we're tackling the final culinary catastrophe on our list, canned beef stew. Now I love a good, hearty stew as much as the next person, but this canned concoction is an insult to stews everywhere. The beef is either dry and chewy like they boiled it for a week straight, or it's fatty and gristly like they scraped it off the bottom of a butcher's bin. There's no in-between, no happy medium. It's a textural nightmare. Honestly, if you're craving a good stew, do yourself a favor and make it from scratch. It's not that difficult, and at least you'll know what's actually in it. This canned abomination, it's a culinary sin and you deserve better. So there you have it, you lot. 12 canned food atrocities you should avoid like the plague at your local Walmart. Trust me, your taste buds will thank you for it. Remember, just because it comes in a can doesn't mean it's food. Sometimes, it's better to spend a little extra time and effort to make something delicious and nutritious from scratch. Until next time, keep it fresh, keep it flavorful, and for God's sake, stay out of the canned food aisle.